And then there are the fun things, like the Model Mars rover given to him by students at Caltech.
That beats getting a t-shirt.
And the mock Sports Illustrated cover.
I think if they ever bring me out, it'll be as Waterboy.
No fancy flat screen TV, just an old tube.
No computer.
That means no email, perhaps a secret to Buffett's success.
It doesn't take a few lucky investments to become one of the richest men in the world. Learn from what it takes to be great from Warren Buffett.
Think about the person you would most like to be in life. So maybe it's one of your contemporaries, maybe it's somebody a little older, but pick out the person you admire the most, the person that you'd change places with if you could. And then write down why you admire them. Just put it on a piece of paper. And then figure out the person that you would least like to change places with you. Who really turns you off? Who do you find repulsive? And list the reasons why that person turns you off so much. And put those down on the other side of the paper. And then look at that list. And you'll find that everything on the left-hand side, what you admire in other people, the qualities they bring to life, cheerfulness, generosity, all kinds of things, you'll find those are things you can do yourself. It's very simple. You got to apply yourself, but the habits you form in doing that early on will carry you through life. And on the other hand, you'll find that the things that make people repulsive, selfishness, obnoxiousness, all these things, egotism, are things that no one has to have. If you find those in yourself, you can get rid of them as long as you get rid of them early. So all I suggest is that you write down a list of what you admire, what you find contemptible, and decide that the ones on the admired side are ones you're going to acquire for yourself. And if you do that when you're young, it'll carry you through the rest of your life. This doesn't work if you do it when you're 50 or 60. By then the habits are too well formed. But if you do it early, behavior becomes a habit. So if you do that, 2 or 3 years from now, if you go through the same exercise, you'll find out that the person you admire the most is yourself. That can be a little dangerous under some circumstances, but it's not a bad thing. I mean, you want to be somebody you like.
How can other people tap dance to work? What's the secret of that?
You find your passion. You find your passion. I was very, very lucky to find it, when I was 7 or 8 years old, and fortunately, my children have found their passion. One son loves farming like nothing else. One son loves music like everything else, and all 3 of them love philanthropy and what they get to do. You're lucky in life when you find it, and you can't guarantee you're going to find it in your first job out. But I always tell the college students that come out, I say, take the job that you would take if you were independently wealthy. You're going to do well at it.
If you think you're going to be a lot happier if you've got 2X instead of X, you're probably making a mistake. I mean, you ought to find something you like that works with that, and you'll get in trouble if you think that making 10X or 20X is the answer to everything in life, because then you will do things like borrow money when you shouldn't, or maybe cut corners on things that your employer wants you to cut corners on, or it just doesn't make any sense. You won't like it when you look back on it. 3 things in hiring people: look for integrity, intelligence, and energy. And he said if the person didn't have the first 2, that the latter 2 would kill them. Because if they don't have integrity, you want them dumb and lazy. You don't want them smart and energetic.
I was just wondering, what would you consider to be the worst investment you've ever made?
The worst investment I ever made? How long do you have? I've made some very bad ones, but that doesn't really bother me. It may bother the shareholders, but that's another question. You're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment. But it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as, maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. And I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing. I read 5 daily newspapers. I read a fair number of magazines. I read 10Ks. I read annual reports, and I read a lot of other things too. So I've always enjoyed reading. I love reading biographies. And some of that is helpful. But there's an intent behind the report. I mean, if it's a sales document, I'm less interested. I don't see any way to mandate what I'm talking about, but that's the kind of report I'm looking for. What I'm trying to do as I read reports, I like to understand just generally what's going on in all kinds of businesses. If we own stock in a company in an industry and there are 8 other companies that are in the same industry, I want to own or be on the mailing list for the reports for the other 8 because I can't understand how my company is doing unless I understand what the other 8 are doing. I want to have the perspective in terms of market share or what's going on in the trend of margins or all kinds of things that I can't get unless I know. I can't be an intelligent owner of a business unless I know what all the other businesses in that industry are doing. And so I try to get that information out of a report. If I'm thinking about investing in a specific company, I try to size up their business and the people that are running it. And over the years, I found reading a lot of reports to be quite useful in terms of making business decisions. 72. I'm getting Social Security now, so I should be in Florida, pushing shuffleboard around or something of the sort. But I do what I can do. Anything in the world I want to do, but what I want to do is run Berkshire Hathaway. Now, why do I want to run it that way? I get to paint my own painting. I go down there every day, and I feel like Michelangelo. They're working on the Sistine Chapel or something. Nobody else may think it's a great painting, but I get to paint my own painting. I do not have people second guessing me. I do not have people saying, why don't you use a little more red paint than blue paint? Why don't you paint a seascape instead of a landscape? I get to do my own thing. It's a form of creativity. It's exactly like somebody feels it's a professional golfer or somebody feels it's a painter. They're not doing it for the money, primarily. They're doing it because they like doing something well. We've got a company, Flight Safety, that trains more pilots than anybody in the world. Flight Safety is run by an 85-year-old man, Al Yulshi. Al started the company with $10,000 in 1951. It now trains 4 or 5 times as many pilots as non-military pilots as anybody in the world, and he is there at 85, and it's a matter of public record. He's got $1 billion worth of Berkshire shares. He works 7 days a week. He loves it, and he loves it for the same reason that I love what I do. He gets to do it his way. He buys these big simulators that you train pilots in. He doesn't have to check with me as to whether to spend $15 million for a simulator. He doesn't ask me. He knows so much more about it than I do. Why in the world would he ask me? Well, I can't tell what kind of a plane I'm in, when I'm flying around. And Al is spending a couple $100 million a year on simulators, spending Berkshire Hathaway money, and he never checks with Omaha. He's never had to come to Omaha for any kind of meetings. He runs his own business, and that's what he loves in life. And I let him do it. I mean, that's my contribution to it, is really turning loose his energies. And, they were properly directed before we bought the company 7 or 8 years ago. Kills great businesses. If you look at, I do believe in looking at history, and I like to study failure, actually. And my partner says, all I want to know is where I'll die, so I'll never go there. And we want to see what has caused businesses to go bad. And the biggest thing that kills them is complacency. I mean, you want a restlessness, a feeling that, you know, that somebody's always after you, but you're going to stay ahead of them. You always want to be on the move. And when you've got a great business, you know, like Coca-Cola, which is, there aren't any like Coca-Cola, but you really, the danger would always be that you rest on your laurels. But I see none of that, obviously, at Coca-Cola. But that is the key, to compete the same way when you've got 1.8 billion servings being sold daily as when you were selling, you know, 10 a day. And that restlessness, that belief that tomorrow is more exciting than today, you know, you just have to have it permeate the organization. And talent is sort of representing the horsepower of the motor, but then in terms of the output, the efficiency with which the motor works, that depends on rationality, because a lot of people start out with 400 horsepower motors and get 100 horsepower of output, and it's way better to have a 200 horsepower motor and get it all into output. And so why do smart people do things that interfere with really getting the output they're entitled to? And it gets into habits, into character, into temperament, and it really gets into behaving in a rational manner. It's not getting in your own way. As I say, everybody here has the ability, absolutely, to do anything I do and much beyond. And some of you will, and some of you won't. But it will. The ones that won't, it will be because you get in your own way. It won't because the world doesn't allow you to. It will be because you don't allow yourself to. I didn't realize when I was getting out of school is how much the unusual person will jump out at you. I mean, you know, and it isn't because they got 200 IQs or anything like that. It's really because of just how they behave, you know, what they bring, the energy they bring, the commitment they bring, the quality of how they do things, how they treat the people around them, all kinds of things. But you will jump out much more than you might anticipate. One of the things you would want to be sure to do is, whether you like it or not, get very comfortable, it may take a while, with public speaking, for example. I mean, that's an asset that will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a liability if you don't like doing it and are uncomfortable doing it. That also will last you 50 or 60 years, and it's a necessary skill. But a lot of the skills are just human skills. If you get the best out of people around you, that's a rare talent, and it doesn't correlate with IQ. It correlates with an attitude and toward the world and toward other people. And it's a talent that if you work at early and you're really conscious about it, you know, you don't have to show up other people. You know, you don't have to be smarter than they are or anything else. You want to bring out the best in them. It will pay huge dividends.
Given a lot of fabulous advice, but what's the best advice that you've ever received?
Well, I received it in a variety of forms, particularly from my father when I was very young. But I mean, he basically, I think, taught me how to live. Not that I did it perfectly or anything like that, but I mean, he was giving me lessons, but he wasn't doing it by preaching to me. He was doing it by example. But basically, well, the biggest lesson, in a sense, I got is the power of unconditional love. I mean, I think there is no power on earth like unconditional love. And I think that if you offer that to your child, I mean, you're 90% of the way home. And there may be days when you don't feel like it. It's not uncritical love. That's a different animal. But to know you always can come back, I mean, that is huge in life. That takes you a long, long way. And I would say that every parent out there that can extend that to their child at a very young age, it's going to make for a better human being.
And you felt like you got that kind of unconditional love from your dad?
I absolutely did, yeah.
That is a powerful thing.
It is a powerful thing.
When we can learn from people who have achieved great level of success, and the phrase stand on shoulders giant. So for example, you've just watched a series of what make this person great. Now, if you adopt these same behaviors, some may work for you, some may not. But the series and other videos that we share will hopefully help you achieve levels of greatness in your life. Adopting behaviors that successful people do will only help you out achieve more. You can take some and you can drop some. You don't have to do them all. Some may work for you, some may not. So hopefully you learn from these behaviors, you start adapting some to your life. I get to create a video about what makes you great in the future. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I appreciate you watching these videos. Thank you.